Ross, I'm really excited to have you here. So you're currently CEO executive coach at Executive Apex. And so you're helping companies with their tech stacks and evaluate that. And it looked like, from what I could gather, is inside of the scaling up, part of the scaling up framework, but you're just adding an extra layer to it that, in my opinion, is super important and super vital because you are a self-proclaimed technomancer, which I heard that and I love that. You'll have to explain what that is, but you're also an adjunct professor at Rice Business, and you're with the scaling up companies as a chief operating officer, integrator, and coach, which the integrator visionary is another thing that I'm excited to pick your brain about. But I'm so happy to have you. Thanks for hopping on with me.
Oh, Drake, it's my pleasure, man. I'm really honored to be here, and thank you for the invitation. I'm looking forward to conversation with you beyond what we already started with.
Yeah, for sure. So Technomancer, let's hop into that because technology, I think some people hear tech and they're like me and they just get all giddy and are ready to go. Some people hear technology if they're running a company and they go,
Right.
So
Right.
give me, what's a Technomancer?
So I say I have a love-hate relationship with technology as well, but I've developed it more into a love relationship nowadays. Yeah, I stole the word from science fiction. In science fiction, a technomancer is someone who works magic with technology. So it's a modern magician or wizard, you might say. So I co-opted it for that. And as you mentioned, I'm a scaling up coach. I've worked with Vern Harnish and some of the other companies there. And then I coach clients through growth stages. And Vern has 4 areas that he focuses on with scaling up. It's strategy, execution, people, and cash. And I added a 5th one, which to me is technology. And to your point a moment ago, technology really stitches everything else together and drives it. And if you're not really up to speed on your technology, which unfortunately most companies are not, most companies, by my estimation, are getting about 40% of the potential of their technology at the moment, which is what prompted me to write the book.
It's shocking to me. And I think I may be a little bit of an outlier here because a lot of times when I'm starting something, I'm immediately looking at what technology can I leverage in order to accelerate whatever I'm doing. And what's been your experience with going into businesses, how well they're using technology? Like 40%, I think there's a bunch of CEOs or founders who will resonate with that and go, oh, yes. What is that? What are some of the outflows of that where you're seeing common issues, or where do you start when you go into a business to help them with their tech?
Yeah, so you identified the other thing that prompted me to work in this area, at least to elaborate in a way that I could share it more, because I've been working with technology for a long time. But I ended up interacting with a lot of CEOs over the course of the last decade or two. And in their gut, they always feel like they're not getting the most out of their technology. Like, I'm not getting the results I paid for. I invested all this technology in these people, and it's just not really delivering for me. But there wasn't a language out there. You can go look up some books on digital transformation and things like that, but they're very technical, they're very specific. Or you might look at one particular software and watch and be able to find some information on how to optimize it. But it doesn't really explain how to work with all the technologies together, like the whole stack of technology that you have, and get the most out of it. And there wasn't a language or a framework that people could use to do that. So what I wanted to do was give that language to CEOs. I wanted to tell them your gut is right. You are right. What you're feeling is correct. You're not getting the most out of your technology. And here are some ways that you can do that. And it doesn't matter what your technology is. It's evergreen thinking, right? It's technology agnostic. It's just first principles, as Elon Musk likes to say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and going to that, the first principles when I'm evaluating tech in my business, what are your first principles? Where do you start, and what does that look like?
Yeah, so I think the simplest way to say it is, first of all, is thinking about your technology, talking about your technology, and then doing something about it. I have a process where I go through essentially initially an assessment. Where are you with your technology? How well is it integrated? How well did the technologies play with each other? There's a line in Jim Collins' book when he was studying the good to great companies. He said, how do those who build great companies think about technology? And I add the word today, because he did that study a long time ago. And at this point, every company starts with a technology, usually email, let's say, and then they layer other technologies on it, but there's nothing that explains to them, okay, when you add another technology, how do you really get these two to work well together? Or what do you stop doing with one and start doing with the other? And then when you get 3 or 4 or 5, and how do you train your people? How do you prepare? And so a lot of it is really just companies are not really thinking a lot about their technology in terms of how they strategically think, planning, part of their strategic annual goals, part of their quarterly initiatives is thinking about their technology. They're not talking about it relative enough on a daily basis in leadership meetings and so forth. And then they're not executing well. And most companies just get technology. They might do some onboarding, And then they'll just have their employees kind of self-manage, self-train, go into the knowledge base of the software provides and learn it and whatever. And people, what they're going to do. They're just going to get by. Do the bare minimum to do what they have to function on their job, which doesn't make your job easier, doesn't make anyone else's job. It just makes their job functional within that technology or stack of technologies. So it's really a lot of that. It's those three things, not really strategically thinking about it, since you like the word strategy. Yeah. They're not really tactical about how they're applying their technology. And then you use the word heuristic, which is another word I can explain later. But to make it simple, It's just, do you have a culture where you really appreciate and value and talk about technology? Do you hire for it? People that are tech savvy or like technology and are willing to adopt technology more readily. So the training is paramount. You should have at least a couple of power users in every major technology that drives your business.
That was something. So with my last company as an internet service provider, and technology was just a huge part of the company. Obviously, you're giving internet to homes and businesses, so people go, well, yeah, duh. But not that. Actually, what the real big thing was, and probably the best decision that we made, was getting our CRM set up that integrated our customer management, all of our billing, a decent portion of our monitoring, and then it actually had an API to where I could hook it up to our intake form on our website for leads, and it would automatically create accounts, and then our customer service reps would be able to just pull that up, make the call, and then fill in some of the extra stuff, as much as eliminating the double work as possible. And then being able to integrate monitoring, I'm not having to open up a slow secondary software in order to get it. It's all running quickly within what I have. Right. And I think that's what you're talking about is so important. And I love the strategies, tactics, and heuristics. I love Daniel Kahneman, who talks about heuristics a lot and thinking fast, thinking slow. So all about us going down that rabbit trail. But I think it is just so important because realistically, when you think about a business, there's a flow to when someone doesn't know about your company to when they're a customer. And technology really allows you to accelerate at such a rapid pace the speed and reduce the friction between those two endpoints.
Right. And that's the drop off for a lot of leads or prospects is the minute they hit friction, they just drop out of the whole thing. You know, if your mobile app doesn't work well, they just drop out. If it works well and then they connect somewhere else and they don't get a phone call or they don't reach a person or whatever it is they're trying to do, they'll just drop out of it completely. And you just nailed it. Like the promise of technology is speed, do things faster, leverage, do more with less, and then do it right the first time, predictability. Like you have predictable results. When a technology runs some application or some process, depending on whether it's a machine or software, it's just more likely to do it the same way every time, over and over and over. And it doesn't get bored doing that, like most of us would.
Yeah, exactly.
So really trying to figure out how do you really optimize your hardware, your software, and wetware is what I call people, your talent, to get those to work seamlessly together and to create that kind of beautiful customer journey is exactly the goal, right?
Yeah. And so you had mentioned in some presentations and some research I was doing, you break up when people think of technology a lot of times. I think most of the time they think of software, but you actually talk about the different layers of technology, the two extra inputs or comprehensive parts of technology besides just the software. And could you walk me through that and how different businesses aren't necessarily thinking holistically about that?
Yeah, exactly. I'll give you some examples. You're right. Like most companies, if they talk about hardware at all, now I'm not saying if it's a machining company or something like that where they use automation, robots or something, obviously they're talking about their technology and looking at it a lot. But most other companies don't look at their hardware as close. So hardware could be things like computers or robotics or routers, just internet connections, things like that just don't do well. I've had a situation where people were working on desktops that were old and they were slow, or laptops that were slow. And I'd watch someone click a command and then sit there for 8 or 10 seconds waiting on the computer to resolve. And we calculated out how many hours of labor they were losing a week because they couldn't do anything until that processed every time they did something. And it only cost $20 to put a new memory chip in there. Any IT person, even any native person like you and I, anybody, could have probably just opened that computer up and stuck a $20 RAM chip in there and completely solved the problem. But it went on for an extended period of time, a really long period of time. So companies will audit their hardware from a tax point of view, right, as an asset point of view, but they don't dig deeper. Like, how well is this technology working? How well is it working with other technologies? I had a situation where a company had a stack of 10 servers in a server room, And I went in and looked at them. All 10 of them were connected. Turns out only one of them was working. So 9 of them weren't even working. And they were hesitant to spend money to replace the one that was working or buy another one. And I said, we did some work. We got some information, calculations, and turned out the electricity that they were spending on keeping the other 9 plugged in and not doing anything with them was still costing them about $820 a month, $829, I think. And over the course of the year, it's $9,000. So we used that $9,000 to buy a brand new server, high efficiency server. Oh, and by the way, the only backup they had was on that same server. So you had 9 servers of that type that had already failed, 1 that was running, and all of your backup was on that same device. It's one of those things that just happens over time. People leave, people move on, stuff breaks. Just over time, things just get let go. So there's some hardware things like that can be done. With the $9,000, we replaced that server with a high efficiency server, a separate Barracuda backup. We mirrored it to the cloud and mirrored it to the IT company. So we had 3 backups, and we're not at risk of losing it all. So there's hardware things like that that are just basic common sense. I like to say it's common sense. It's just not common practice.
That's it.
Like a lot of the things that I talk about, again, are first principles. It's just basic, but it's very comprehensive in its simplicity. It's common sense that's just not commonly practiced.
It's such an interesting example because these are the hidden costs of outdated technology or outdated hardware or outdated things. And I think some of it comes down to, and I'd be curious to hear your thoughts when you're talking to a CEO, I would imagine some of it comes down to just not being aware of what is actually, one, there's a bit of obscurity and fuzziness on what is actually happening, and not having enough exposure to different technologies to have a vision of what it could be.
That's what I say. It should be part of your strategic thinking every year. When you do your annual planning or write your strategic plan for your business, what you're going to do with your technology over the course of the year should be a part of that. And maybe you're even keeping your eyes into other industries. How are my competitors using technology? How are other industries using technology? A lot of times what surprises our industry actually comes from somewhere else that we weren't watching or paying attention to. So just keeping the pulse on that as you develop your business, looking for opportunities. And I'm not saying be a typical CEO and chase every shiny bauble. We're all guilty of that because a lot can be done with the existing technology. If you're only getting 40% of its potential, just optimizing and working on some of these things that I talk about will get you to the next level on your tech. And there's plenty of statistics out there. If you use your technology well, you're 3 times more likely to beat your competitors than if you don't. It's a lot of information that explains all that.
Yeah. Because you had talked about, I think that I had seen you have 3 strategies, 3 tactics, and 3 heuristics, right? That when you're talking about technology, how to get the most leverage out of your technology. Can you go through some of those?
Yeah, so again, this is really just a thinking, talking, and doing. So on the strategic side, it's basically 1, how are you thinking about the technology? Is it part of your strategic planning? Is it part of your quarterly initiatives that you're working on? Are you looking to the future to see what other technology options or possibilities are out? And are you using it everywhere in your business? I've had situations where a company was using a technology really well in one department or one area of the company. Maybe they're using a CRM really well in sales, but they're not doing it well in customer service or not at all. Or they're doing a great job marketing to bring in customers, but they're doing a poor job of bringing in talent. And so just how do you leverage your technology across the whole business landscape that you're doing, your whole business flywheel, versus just leveraging it in one department or having different solutions in different departments that don't work well together. And then on the tactical side, it's more about how do you match up your workflows? How do you map your workflows with the new technology? Sometimes companies will just continue to layer technology onto bad workflows. I had a situation, I first learned this lesson. I went to a company and they were producing 5 finished units with 120 labor hours a week. And just by remapping their workflows and reapplying where they had their technology, not even buying new technology, just reapplying the technology they had, we were able to get that down to 40 hours of labor a week, and we were producing 22 finished units. So it's like a 12-fold increase, 10x right there. And it's just, a lot of times it's just how you're doing things. They added technology, didn't have the workflows adjusted to really leverage fully the capabilities that the technology provided. And this is administrative, it's manufacturing, it's across the entire breadth of companies. I like to say everything is a process, just not always the right process. Yeah. So if you can get the right technology and the right process together, it is like magic. It's amazing what it can do. And a lot of it is data related as well at the tactical level. Are you really collecting metrics on the outputs and on the process itself, and then revisiting those, using that as feedback to make decisions about the process or the outputs? And then at the heuristic level, and let me explain heuristics. So heuristics means rules of thumb. The average person makes between, depending on whose research you believe, the average person makes between 3,000 and 35,000 decisions a day. And 80 to 90% of those are completely subconscious. We don't even recognize that we're doing it. So let's go with the most conservative number. We'll say 3,000, and we'll go even more conservative and say only 10% of those apply to work. The rest of them are other things in your personal life or whatever. So that means every person in your company is making 300 of these subconscious decisions a day about your business. And so let's imagine I'm a frontline worker. In the front office, go-to-market strategy is quality. We're all about quality. We have the most amazing quality pens. They're just brilliant, beautiful, amazing quality pens. I'm a frontline worker. All I hear from my boss my supervisor is how we're behind schedule, we're over budget, we're just having a terrible time, we need to get things moving. And I see this pen coming down, and this branding is a little wonky. It's not our branded color. The blue is blue, but it's not really our blue. And the pen's still right, so it's still a pen. Do you think the average person lets it go, or do you think they pull it off the line? I'm worried about cutting costs, reworking the pen, because that's what I hear every day from my supervisor. Most people, what do you think they do?
Oh, I think they just let it go. It's easier. It's written. I don't want to upset everyone in the line by saying, hey guys, we have to stop everything. Now I'm negatively incentivized. It's really thinking about the incentives of business. I'm negatively incentivized for actually calling out something bad.
Absolutely, right. And so they let it go. And if a customer calls and complains, but I don't hear the complaint, my supervisor doesn't hear the complaint, somehow the complaint never gets to me, what do you think happens the next time I see one of these wonky blue pens go down the line?
It just keeps going.
I don't even think about it. I just let it go. That's my new rule of thumb. That's my heuristic. My heuristic now is just let it go. So now all of these funny colored pens are going out there after we've been talking about how great our quality is. So there's all these kinds of decisions that people have just built upon past experience, good or bad, and they just don't even think about those things anymore. They're just automatic. And this happens day in and day out in a company. And so if you don't get people on board with what you really want and making sure that they change those rules of thumb, and that's where technology is important. If you value technology, want people to leverage technology and be really tech savvy and disciplined with it, you have to talk about it constantly. It has to be a part of your culture. And then at the heuristic level as well, let's say you have 5 major technologies that drive your business. You should have at least 2 power users of that technology. And by power user, I'll say on a scale of 1 to 10, a 1 is, I have no idea what this technology is. And the 10, I'm so good I could onboard and sell other companies on it. Most companies have 0, 8 or 9s on any technology in their company. Most of their people are average or below. And if you don't have power users that also know your business, how can you really leverage the technology? How can you take all the things that are available with it? Like you mentioned a CRM earlier, an ERP system. How do you really leverage all the possibilities out of that thing if you don't even know what it can do? Because nobody in your company is versed in it. And then if they're well versed in it, but they don't know your business, it's hard to make the best decisions, right? So you want both. At least one of those two should be really savvy and really knowledgeable about your company business and the model that you're putting and the products and so forth.
Yeah, I love the heuristics too, because it's very important to understand what are the neural pathways in your business that just the average at every level, every position, whether it's frontline worker, their manager, manager's manager, and then all the way up to the executive team. What are the just well-worn neural pathways that we're just going down? Because I think one of the worst things you can hear in a business is we've just always done it that way. And so what you're telling me is that there's profit available in most of those cases, because down to how do we think about when I was onboarding my CSRs, my customer service representatives, most of it was focused on what are the ways that they need to think about things? How do we communicate the way that we think about things? And then how do we use this software that should make your job easier so that you are a power user? Instead of going to a knowledge base, and this is a problem with the way most knowledge bases are done, they go, we've got 500 features. All right, let's teach you about all 500 features instead of starting with, here's the outcome that we want, and here are the steps that you need to go through the outcome. Let's make it applicable and in a way that it connects to our business case, and then talk about the reasons why we do things this specific way in order to get the outcome that we want, right?
Yeah. And they're within their own guide rails of their own software. You know what? Now that we have a chat function like Slack doesn't say, okay, now stop using email from here. Here's best practices with email and Slack. Use Slack for this, use email for that. I've gone into companies and I'll say, can I see a specific document? And I'll watch someone spend 10 minutes looking for it because they don't know whether it was sent to them in email or Slack, or it's attached to a project software like Asana, or if it's in an intranet somewhere or on their desktop, stored locally. And so they'll be looking around trying to find it. They'll finally find it and they'll look up and they're all smiles. And I'll ask them, I'll say, is that the most recent one? And then their face will twist because they don't know, because there's no naming convention. There's no date on the document. Companies, something as simple as document storage. They don't store the document in a central location where it's time and date stamped. It's marked as the most current. It's named in a way that it can be found easily with a search. They only send a link. You don't send the document, that kind of thing, where it always links back to the most current document. And so the problem with a lot of the softwares and other things is they literally stay within their own boundaries and they don't explain how do you optimize it with the technologies that you have. That's where you have to figure that out. And that's why having at least some basic principles and fundamental beliefs about how to do that will help a lot. To help get you where you can bring those things together and figure out, what do I stop doing with this and start doing with this? How do I map my workflow a little bit to take advantage of this amazing capability this software has that we haven't been using? And that's where the real power is. There's a lot of money to be found in the simple things. We're paying for a bunch of software we don't even use, or we're using a software and we're only using it as one part of the company and we could be using it somewhere else. Or there's a lot of low-hanging fruit there, but the real power is in getting all of these things working together more fully. If you get 10 or 20% more out of one that rolls into the next one, 10 or 20%, those multipliers, you can get 10 times the results really quickly.
Oh, yeah.
Across the whole spectrum of technology.
And just for instance, using your example, one, we're just looking at the economic environment right now. We're all concerned about labor costs, right? So labor costs are going up, right? Yeah. So when you are now having to, labor costs cannot just be an afterthought. And I don't think they are for most people, but once, like you mentioned, 10 minutes finding a file, let's say that happens 2 or 3 times a day. Now take that and scale that across your organization, literally because you just couldn't have a specific process of, hey, here's what we do with files, here's how we label them, here's how we name them. And just the savings there are enormous. How much time do you have that's being spent doing double work, doing something that should be automated?
Oh, yeah, I call that the 100 off. People act as if it's a one-off. It's the one time they've been doing it, but they've been doing it 100 times and they act as if it's the first time every time.
Yeah.
Why do that? That's what technology is great at. Like, offload that kind of stuff to technology so your people can use their brain power for the things that are important. And one of the ways that you can find, where do I look for places to work on my technology, is where your employees frustrated. Usually if someone's frustrated, and frequently it's because the technology isn't working the way it's supposed to, or it's just they haven't been taught right, or someone else isn't using it right, and when it gets to them, they have to rework things. So a lot of times looking for those frustration points is a good place to start looking for where you should leverage and start solving problems.
So when you're going into a company, because going along the lines of when you had Integrator, I see Integrator on a profile, and I'm like, and it's a fascinating thing. So when you're talking to CEO, is it the CEO who is the visionary, who's out looking for technology and they need an integrator to implement that? How do you play with that dynamic of the visionary integrator dynamic when you go into a company?
Yeah, so for me, that's the kind of the way I look at it. I like the language from Rocket Fuel. Essentially, it's the CEO who's probably the one feeling it and not being able to articulate what's wrong. And this is funny. It's funny to me that these basic principles are not even taught to people in engineering school or network administration or any of those places. They don't really talk about it. And I think people are confused. IT people tend not to operate the software. They tend to put the software and get it operating, get it running, get it working through your servers and your system and your routers and those kind of things, and connecting it maybe to other software. But they don't actually operate the software to serve your customers. In limited cases, I guess, when you're a tech company. But for most of us, that's not the case. And so people just assume that they should be the ones solving it, but they're not even taught these kind of principles in school. So the CEO has no one to turn to. They don't have anyone that can articulate to them what's wrong and why they're having a problem. And it's not in COO school either. I've never seen anything like this. I looked for something like this. In fact, I want to build this maybe into an academic course as well, so maybe we can get it into the schools and graduate some CTOs and CEOs and COOs with some understanding of this. But so it is talking to the CEO. Here's the language now. Here's, in simple terms, what's going on with your technology. There's a lot of value to be had. There's a lot of money left on the table here. I have an assessment tool. So I basically have an assessment, an audit, and a scorecard. So the assessment will explain to them, here's where your company is now. Go through these 10 questions, give you a gauge as to where you are with your technology, give you a benchmark. And it can tell you what areas are shortcomings and you can work on to improve. And then you do the audit, which we talked about. You look at your hardware, your software, and your wetware, and you actually evaluate how important is it to my business? How well are we leveraging it? Was it costing us? Not just direct costs, but indirect costs. What did it cost to purchase? What's it costing to operate? And then how well are we leveraging the speed, leverage, and predictability out of it so that we can determine whether this tech is really doing what we want. Then you can create some action items to solve the problems like the slow desktops we talked about earlier or the server issue. And then the next part is when you actually go in and scorecard the biggest drivers of your technology and how to get those major technologies that you have working optimally. So you score them, you figure out some of the corrective actions. But just giving the language to the CEO to understand what's wrong. And now they can say, okay, yeah, I see what's wrong. Looking at this assessment, looking at this scorecard and this audit stuff, we're not doing any of these things. And so I know why it's not working. Let me hand this off to the COO or CTO or someone, and then have them run through and execute a process to do it full on, literally go through the assessment and the audit and the scorecarding, and then take the corrective actions needed to get everything working well and getting that machine running quick and fast and smooth, seamless.
When you are evaluating technology, is technology and process two sides of the same coin now in nowadays?
Yeah, they're almost so married together. You almost can't talk about one without the other. I would say if you're doing anything with technology, you really should have some basic process improvement understanding, whether it's the original total quality management from back in the day or Lean or Six Sigma, however deep you want to go on that. And there's a lot of stuff out there. But again, a lot of it's just common sense. Like, where do we eliminate rework? Where do we provide more value with less effort? Where do we do things repeatedly that we can take advantage of the fact that technology can do that so much better and faster? And then how do we work those two things together? What is this technology capable of that we're not using that would save us time and effort? Now, the idea is to spend an hour now getting it right to save 100 hours later, or produce 100 hours of work with the 1 hour that you just spent. I think you made that comment that people tend to not want to sacrifice that time at the beginning, but it's just costing them in the long run, pain and suffering that could be avoided.
Yeah. I think it's always so interesting. It's one of the phrase, if you want to go really fast, you have to start really slow.
Yeah, that's a true statement. And unfortunately, what happens is a lot of times, if you've been in any company, this happens. Like, there's a 90-day window where they start some new initiative, and then 90 days, everybody just forgets about it because people hate change. Most people can't stand change, which is why I was saying at the beginning, what the heuristic is, you need to hire for people that want to be tech savvy. Today's marketplace, the talent wants to work with cutting edge tech. They want to know they're going to a company where they're going to learn really cool skills and work with really good technology because they know it saves them time and energy and frustration. So you have to create that. So it's tongue in cheek, but it's also serious. You said, how do I work with the CEO and whoever to get this done? I have a motto. It's ruthless technology adoption. If I'm going to come in and work with the company, we've got to be ruthless about getting this done. We have to get the assessment done. We got to get the audit done. We got to get the scorecarding done. And we have to take all the corrective actions that we've identified. Maybe not everything all at once or not in the same week, month, or day, but let's be serious and move this forward because the results are astronomical. Why wouldn't you want that?
I know things that have worked for me and things that I have heard is so often the way it is communicated to people is, oh, we're changing X, right? All I hear is risk, downtime, all these things instead of saying, hey, when you're going to the front line, hey, what are you doing that's extra that we should make easier? And then you hear that and be like, then when you're going out and gathering those insights and connecting with people going, hey, I think this could be done an easier way for you, as opposed to like it just using those specific words. Now all of a sudden you're creating champions for the change that's happening, as opposed to, wait, you mean work can be less frustrating for me? Which is really what technology should do. Good technology should make work less frustrating and a better experience for anybody that's there.
You want to work in the things that you're strong at. Typically what we procrastinated about is things that we don't like doing or we're weak at, right? So let's offload that stuff to technology. Let's keep the stuff that we enjoy doing that helps us engage with our work and think of it that way, And it is a great place to start, is talking to your customers and your stakeholders, your talent in your organization. What's frustrating about our process or our product that we can work on? Right? And gathering all that intel, and it'll point you in the right direction, typically. You'll find really quick where there's a lot of challenges. Don't think that the computers that were running slow, that they hadn't heard that complaint 1,000 times before I got there. There's no doubt that happened, right?
Yeah.
It's just not taken seriously. It's just a complaint. Oh, they're always complaining. And it's just a different way of looking at it. Power of technology is just so good. Why wouldn't you want to use it?
Yeah, the ever present, I'm on the phone with some random company and it's like, oh, hang on, my computer's running slow. Like, how many times do you hear that? It's a pervasive issue when you can just reference it and everybody laughs because they're like, yeah, I remember every customer service is, yeah, if only they were psychic, right? But everything is slow as soon as you need it.
Oh, yeah. That's a perfect example. I had a client that had a sales department. And this long story short, they distributed, but they also built some assemblies and they customized some parts that they shipped out. And essentially, when you looked at it, they were taking, on average, 2 days to quote a customer call in. Take them 2 days to get a quote back to them to try to close the deal. And 7 days if it was a custom order. And so we looked at it, and it was funny because all the companies they worked with, half of them had digital tools that they could have been using to quote faster. And they weren't even taking advantage of that. They were using old systems and old catalogs and old pricing mechanisms. And it was a matter of just getting all those tools from those vendors that were already there and somewhat prioritizing the vendors that had those tools because it saved us a lot of time. And then digitizing some of the rest of it and creating the right process. We got that down from an average of 2 days. 80% of the quotes were delivered on the first call. Custom orders then took 2 days instead of 7 days. And then the close ratios across the board on both of those went up over 20%.
Yeah.
And so for the custom orders, that was almost a doubling of their customer order sales. The money is there to be had if you just want to take a little bit of time. And it didn't take us long to do that. We didn't have to invest in any money. All the tools came from our vendors. We didn't even pay for those. It was just the time and energy it took to think it through and put the right process together and pull the right tools together for it.
Yeah, it's funny because I don't think there are too few people realize that there is a competitive advantage to being easy to work with.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Well, I used to do process improvement control just doing that. I always said, look, this is the process your customer wants. And I'd put a dot on a whiteboard. They want an easy button. They just want to push a button and have it all happen for them. I said, here's this bowl of spaghetti down here. This is your current process for them.
Yeah, exactly. And so often we make decisions based on what it does for our business as opposed to the way it impacts the customer journey. For instance, so with internet service provider, so like the internet that you get is the same as the internet that I get fundamentally, right? There's not much difference. Right. However, you need to get a new internet service provider. Do the people on the phone actually want to sit there and call every single internet service provider to talk about something that they don't really understand? Really, all they want is they want to come home from work, they want to sit down, they want to turn on Netflix, and they want it to work. If it doesn't work, they want to be able to call someone, get to them quickly, or they want, if it can't be fixed right away, they want it to be fixed within 24 to 48 hours, faster if possible. Once you realize that, at least for my business, those were the main drivers of every part of the decision. Like, they don't care about speed. The average person doesn't know the difference between 100 megabits or 10 megabits or 50 megabits. Internet's like sex. You're only upset if you're not getting any. And like, you've got all these things mapping out the process and just making it easy once you get them on the phone. Like you said, if you can cut it down to being able to deliver the quote on the call, tell me that's not a better customer experience.
Absolutely. They get their answer, they're on. Because if your competitors aren't doing it, and that's to the point we made earlier, which is if you're using the technologies, you're 3-1 over your competitors. I mean, that's statistics. You can look that up. Why not be that? Why not be that person? If all you got to do is spend some time and energy getting your technology right, why not? And that's what you're there for, right?
You can be a visionary in how you deliver your services.
And the visionary can still be looking for some of the other cool things that might be coming along, right? And exploring that. And it's really fun and exciting. I worked at Singularity University for 7 years, and we basically took all the coolest technologies we could find and we shared them with executives in our programs just so they already be up to speed on all the stuff that was happening out there. And it's just miraculous what you'll find if you're looking. And again, not chasing every shiny bauble, just chasing the ones that make sense. Right?
Yeah. And there's time, I imagine in most businesses there is at least one low-hanging fruit.
Oh, easily.
At least one.
I've paid for entire engagements with me just from the monthly savings from things that we're wasting money on.
Yeah.
So not every time, over a long period of time, obviously that's part of the case. But again, that's the low-hanging fruit. The real power is in getting all of these technologies that are only working at 40%, get them up to 60 or 80% and leveraging against each other at 60 or 80% or 90. That's where the real money comes and the real competitive advantage comes. And you can double your return on assets really quickly that way.
Yeah. So when you're going into a company, how much of it is getting existing technologies to just work better And how much of it do you end up like going a new direction with the technology to, let's say, consolidate a bunch of the old stuff together? Do you have just a rough like way of either how you determine that or what percentage that is?
Yeah, I'd say probably 80% of the time you can just leverage what you have better and you'll get the results that you were looking for, if not more than what you were looking for. And I'm not saying it doesn't make sense to still think about changing, but put that into your strategy. When you do your annual planning, let's say, okay, we did identify that we want to maybe move to a different CRM or something like that's more current. So let's plan that and put that into our approach for next year or whatever. At least think through. But yeah, 80% of the time, you're already losing money on stuff so bad, you can just fix that problem, stop the bleeding. I have a little paper napkin calculation that I use that'll tell you whether is it a cost sink? Are you actually losing money and being more inefficient because people don't know how to use this technology? Or you're paying for something you're not using at all. And then there's a break-even point where, okay, you're getting break-even on this technology. What you paid for it and what you're paying to maintain it and use it is paying for itself. And then there's exponential results, and that's really what you want, right? That's the beauty of what technology can do for you. The promise of technology is exponential speed, leverage, and predictability, not break-even. So let's get that. And most of the time that can be gotten with what they already have. That's the point of why I write what I'm doing and why I'm putting it out there, is I want to give it to as many people as possible, because there's a do-it-yourself part of this, right? You could take the chapter that I've written just in Cracking the Rich Code, along with the tools that I'll send you for free, and you can go through most of this process just from those two things and figure out a lot of the problems that you have and fix it. And then if you need more help, you can always engage me or somebody else to come in and really help you go through the process more thoroughly or look at your tech more closely. And then, of course, you can always do the high end and have somebody come in and fix it all for you. So the first two options are probably more likely.
Where would they get those free tools?
So right now, the book chapter should be out in March. I thought it was going to be out in February, but it'll be out in March, Cracking the Rich Code, Volume 10.
Okay.
The chapter's in there, which outlines my principles and processes. And then you can just email me. My email's in the book, but I'll give it to you here. It's just ross@executiveapex.com. If you just email me, I'll send you the tools straight away and can also get you some more information. My book will be out this summer. It's Technology Momentum, Systematically Accelerate Your Business 10X.
Okay.
And that takes the short version that you can get in Cracking the Rich Code. It's the full-blown book with the rubric and all the processes on how to fix everything and how to run through your tech in more detail. And again, just hand that off to somebody that can go execute on it. But at least now you'll have the language to understand what's not working and why. And I've also got a little giveaway thing that I have that identifies the top 10 mistakes companies make with their technology and the 3 top solutions for mitigating most of those 10 mistakes.
Okay. So you had mentioned, so if I'm a CEO and I'm looking for the backup napkin way to quickly evaluate my technology, could you go through that real quick?
So basically the assessment has about 10 questions, and it's like what we just talked about, many of the topics we just talked about. How well are you leveraging your technology across your whole business? How well are you looking for the new options for technology? How well are you planning and using strategic thinking around your technology? And then how well are you implementing the technology, as far as, do you really think about how it implements with other technologies you're using? Are those mapping up together? And then how well did you map it to your workflows? Did you really adjust your workflows to really leverage the technology? And have you really understood the technology well enough to leverage it fully? And then are you collecting data? KPIs are huge. Are you collecting data not only on the process itself, but on the results and the cybersecurity kind of approach? Are you really protecting your data and information? And then on the people side, are you really training your people? Come on, get them trained, get them well trained. At least identify the top 3 to 5 technologies running your company and have at least a couple of power users, and then have them train everybody else to at least to where they're above average on that technology and really getting the most out of it. And reward people that are good with technology. Talk about it. Have artifacts in your company that show that you appreciate and value it. So again, it's really just thinking about technology, talking about it regularly, and then executing on it, because a lot of it's common sense. It's just not common practice.
I think that's really important. That'll be good info for anybody to go through those mental checklist of what's happening. So 2 questions and then we'll wrap up. So technology's going crazy right now. We've got ChatGPT, we've got all these things. As the Technomancer, what are the things that get you most excited about right now? What do you think will be most influential over the next 2 years in technology?
Wow. So I'm going to say ChatGPT, you nailed one of them for sure. If people haven't looked into that, I recommend highly that you go look at it and play with it. This kind of leads right into what people have been saying for decades in the education space. We should be teaching kids how to query, not how to memorize. because knowing the right way to ask a question and the right questions to ask, who was it, Einstein or whatever, said if I had an hour to solve a problem, I'd spend the first 55 minutes trying to figure out the right question to ask. So that's one, ChatGPT for sure. I think we're going to see probably something pretty big in the energy space. I think nuclear fusion's right at the cusp of making some huge breakthroughs. So if we can get to the point where energy is abundant, I'm not sure wind and solar are necessarily the right solutions, but nuclear is quite a different thing. And if we can figure that one out, I mean, we already have, nuclear is already good energy, but if we can get fusion, people can stop worrying about some of the other side effects of the current tech. Obviously AI, energy, and then I'll just go with robotics for the moment. I think that kind of couples with AI pretty closely. Robotics are basically just computers that can move.
Is it?
I was going to say quantum computing is probably the next one.
Oh,
it's not what people think it is. It's really good for quantum computing. Is most computers can only process one command at a time. A quantum computer can process 1 million at a time. So it's not 1 or 5 or 10% more powerful. It's 1 million times more powerful.
Okay.
But it's very limited on what it can process. So it's really good for figuring out drug discovery, right? Figuring out all the possible chemical compounds that will cure a disease or solve a problem for people. Or in the chemistry of making a rubber tire, it can crunch those kind of numbers that no normal computer could do in our lifetime right now. So yeah, I'd go quantum computing, nuclear power, and AI, ChatGPT, or some similar thing. The next stage of whatever ChatGPT is.
Yeah. I've been looking at a lot of that stuff, and it's really interesting, all the stuff that's happening. And people get so concerned about job loss when it comes to that kind of stuff. I look at it like, hang on, whoa. One, you don't realize what's happening with manufacturing, where we're completely taking everything that we have built from our economic base in China, our manufacturing base in China. We're going to be reshoring and nearshoring that. And so I think you'll see a ton of people. You're just empowering one individual to do more things with AI than you are going to be cutting out things. Like, you're just going to be more productive, right? It's just like email. There's going to be more productivity that comes from it. And some jobs will be eliminated, but those jobs will be reformulated into something else.
You are spot on. Go back to the 1950s, 1940s. We added process improvement, automation, offshoring, outsourcing, computers, the internet, immigration, globalism. The jobs per capita in the United States grew. So there was more than one job growth for all of those things, for every person who entered the workforce. So despite all of those changes and all those things, now did the type of jobs change? Absolutely. The number of jobs actually increased significantly in this country and in most of the world, despite all of these amazing advances in technology and so forth.
Yeah, I think it's totally true. So if somebody's trying to get a hold of you, trying to get access to a free tool, or just connect with you in general, what's the best place to do that?
Yeah, easiest thing is just to email me at ross@executiveapex.com or check me out on LinkedIn. Go there first. That's usually the easiest way to catch me. Those are the places I'm the most frequently at. If you end up picking up the Crack in the Ridge code, I think my phone number is actually going to be published in there, so you can just text me if you want.
Awesome. That's cool. Ross, I appreciate you coming on and talking to me. I'm really excited to see how the audience responds to everything.
Drake, you were great. Thank you for the interview, and it was a great time with you. I think we're going to build a friendship beyond this, to be sure. And I think your podcast is amazing, and it's going to do wonderful things for the community. I appreciate that.
Awesome. Thank you. Bye, everybody. We'll see you next time.